This is episode 532 on the 10th of June 2022. The streak is over. All the hype and all the promotions around the Indian team winning 13 consecutive 20 over matches to create a world record, all that came to an end. Not a disappointing end, but you can call it a very interesting way in which the match progressed yesterday night. But the question is, what's the fuss all about? I did talk about getting into the details of captaincy mind games Dubara. So, as always, the pseudo experts who think themselves as someone who can just give their opinion without having any experience of being in the hot seat or being a captain. Those who were captains themselves went through captaincy mind games and all those things, but now they have a microphone in their hand and they think they can do anything. So when Rohit Sharma, Kohli, Bumrah, etc. were rested for this tournament because they are taking a flight to England in the next 1 week. In fact, next Friday they will be over there. Rahul was made the captain, and then the question became, this is an important moment for Rahul to show his skills. He is next in line to be the captain. Though there were a few other contenders in Rishabh Pant, Shreyas Iyer, I would even say, and Ishan Kishan is also a contender. But the question will be asked, is he good enough? Well, everyone starts with zero captaincy experience. I also, when I became one of the leaders of an organization, I had no experience, but I understood what I had to do, and without getting into any kind of controversies, without creating any conspiracy theories, I did the job. And I've been doing it for the past 2 years, being a part of an important decision making leadership group. But more on that later, which is irrelevant right now. But what happens? Couple of days before the match, Rahul gets injured. One can question, why did he get injured? Is he not fit enough? Is he not taking his fitness seriously? Well, we all know which and what is to blame for players getting injured, which is already increasing and it's getting into double pages. So what happens when Rahul gets injured? Pant takes over. Remember 15 years ago when a certain Rahul decided to relinquish captaincy and retire from the sport, a Dhoni took over. And 15 years later, another Rahul gets injured for whatever reasons, and then a Rishabh Pant takes over, who has been so far called a Chota Dhoni, but he wants to create his own identity, and I agree with that factor. So Pant takes over, and what happens? Conspiracies, theories start flying, because the question is, why was Rishabh Pant appointed the captain when you have Shreyas Iyer, Ishan Kishan and Hardik Pandya as more competitive captains? Why not Hardik Pandya? And then another player got injured in Kuldeep Yadav. He was hit on the hand during a practice session. That is why I never like practice session, because such things can happen, and then you blame that the players don't take a break, or they're not well equipped enough, or they don't protect themselves enough during these practice sessions and they get injured. And so far the Indian Cricket Board has not sent any replacements, though if I would want to send replacements, who would be replacing these two individuals? Well, there would be like for like replacement. For Rahul, it would be Prithvi Shaw, even if his Mumbai Indians Ranji Trophy team has reached the semi-finals of that Ranji Trophy 5-day tournament. I would still pick him up from there and then straight away tell him, no, you are playing this 20 over tournament. If the Indian Cricket Board and the selectors want the same, and then I would add Kunal Pandya as another all-rounder, or I will even add Rahul Chahar as the spinner, and then not go into discussion about leg spinners and off spinners and wrist spinners and finger spinners and who should be in the team and what are the spots being contested for. For me, if I could have everyone, I would have every spinning all-rounder as a part of the team. Whether they are good enough to play in the World Cup, whether they are not, is no one's business but their own. Well, if you read yesterday's newspaper, false narratives were thrown around that Pant, Iyer, and Kishan are fighting for spots because they did not do well in the recently concluded National T20 Cup, or even if they did well, the strike rate was well below the acceptable norms. And who decides what is the acceptable norm for strike rates? Well, those who say this should be the strike rate have no saying. So let's not even get into this debate about strike rates because I have already gone through that discussion and we'll get around to it later on. But coming to yesterday's match, the moment India scored 211 runs, it was a good score. You can say that in 20 overs you can get to 300 and still you will feel it's not good enough. So the question is, what is good enough? Is 211 good enough? Of course, South Africa chased it down, but then of course after the batters did all the job, all the hard work, then came the question, did the bowlers not bowl well? I think the bowlers bowled well, but when you are on a ground which is as big as your living room, it's the smallest, the most ugliest ground in the world. If I had my say, I would never organize a match in Delhi. For me, Delhi doesn't deserve to host a match unless the governing body, the Delhi Cricket Board governing body and the national governing body decide to dismantle that piece of ugly architecture and make a fresh new stadiums with big boundaries and something worth looking at. Because looking at the Delhi stadium, whether it's sitting over there as a spectator or whether watching from home as a viewer, it's the ugliest piece of architecture ever created. It's one of those stadiums which is unsafe. The structural integrity of that stadium will always be under question. It can collapse anytime. That's the fear, and that fear is not going away. But we'll talk more on that later. Let's look at yesterday's match. Of course, once again, the newspapers did not mind going after the players. Despite getting 211, you still said India did not do well in the first 6 overs. Why? Because they only scored 50, 55, 56 runs in the first 6 overs. Gaikwad never looked comfortable despite scoring 23 or 15. I think and of course, the South African bowlers bowled well. They bowled the right lines, lengths, blah 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 blah. I still think India did well, and as far as South Africa winning this tournament, winning this match is concerned, it was just a bit of luck. Whatever plans they had, it worked to a T. And then of course, but David Miller would carry on his awesome form from the National T20 Cup into the International T20 Cup and do what he does. But, well, okay, let's say that they did well. They had a good partnership between Rassie van der Dussen, who I see as the apt replacement for Fab du Plessis, who did exactly this when Fab du Plessis himself was part of the team. And David Miller, that's his job. He's not going to score 30 of 30. He's going to hit blindly. So how do I look at this match? Did they bowl badly? No. Did Pant as a captain err in his decision making? No. We have already gone after him as far as the his Delhi captaining is concerned, where he made errors. I do not think he made errors over here. On the contrary, I think his captaincy was A rated. I would give him 9 out of 10 because 10 out of 10 can often mean bias. So, for his captaincy, irrespective of the results, irrespective of how the bowlers were going for fours and sixes, and how, according to the pseudo media, they were not good enough, which I disagree with, I think it was a great captaincy for him. You couldn't have done much more better. 2-1-1 on most days is a good score. South Africa chased it down, but they're not going to do it every time. And then, of course, the size of the ground, the ugliness of the architecture, well, that can always distract you. That's the interesting part. But the conspiracy theories will always remain. And this means the streak is over. The 12-0 winning streak has halted, which means they have to restart from the next match if they have to win. Will once again there will be questions that they missed Rohit Sharma's astute captaincy. They missed Virat Kohli's aggression. Well, if these two individuals are not in the team, there's no point saying we missed them. Those who are not there, they are not there. Because this is the team which will take them into the next decade. Maybe except Karthik, the others will do the job for the next 5 to 6 years. I see Ishan Kishan as a possible captain. I see Iyer as a probable captain. Pant has already proven himself. Pandya will continue to do the job if he keeps himself fit. So that's one discussion I'm not going to have, because it is a meaningless discussion. But I think they did well to get to 2-1-1, and I think they deserve all the praise, irrespective of what happened finally and what the pseudo media says, what the PPED media says, that wow, Miller and Van der Dussen, what a magical night, fours and sixes galore. It just kept on coming. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about this. Could be a fluke victory. It's not the end of the world, and especially not in such tournaments where points are not at stake, unlike the qualification for the 50-over World Cup, where you have to not only win the match, but winning the match will get you qualification points for the World Cup. So I don't think such things make a difference eventually. But Pant, who has been playing for the last 2 to 3 years, did not have to go through that torture called interview. He was immediately promoted to vice captain after Rahul was the OG, the original captain, and then he was made the captain despite having other players in the team who have captained their domestic team before, and the controversies around that will continue to grow big and big. They will continue to inflate. But there are times where, despite having experience, you have to go through the interview wasteland. I see interview as a wasteland, as something which doesn't help anyone. In fact, interviews are the biggest causes of stress than anything else. Because because we are so eager to impress the person, the interviewee, that we lose our minds, we lose our heads, we lose our composure, we get stressed, we are sweating. Why should you be stressed over something as minor as an interview? It's a wasteland. It doesn't bring out any experience just because somebody has gone for 100 interviews. It shows that it's not the person's fault. That person has all the experience, but the person who is sitting on the other side of the chair doesn't see him or her as a potential individual, as a potential colleague. So I don't see giving 100 interviews as something of a big achievement. If you have given 100 interviews, it shows that your skills have not been given the respect But on the other hand, despite knowing that the person interviewing you is jealous, obnoxious, and arrogant, you still continue to go through that process again. So if someone tells me I have given 100 interviews, I will not be impressed. Maybe I was impressed a few years ago, but right now it doesn't impress me, because if I had an option and after one or two interviews that person did not give me the respect, I would do the same. I would not go for an interview ever again. I would not go through that process where the person sitting on the other side is obnoxious, arrogant, jealous because the interviewee does not want the person being interviewed to be more experienced than him. That's why a lot of broadcasting companies don't invite me on their panel, because I'm more experienced than the entire panel put together in the commentary box and as the writers. They see me as someone who will eclipse them, who will put their jobs in danger. Therefore, I don't want to be invited now. I have my own setup, and I don't see working for others as something of an achievement. I see it as something of a demotion. For me, having your own time, deciding when to do, what to do, how to do at your own time, making your own schedule, and not being affected by someone else's schedule, at least up to some point, not allowing other aspects to affect what you want to do. So if I want to watch a movie, I don't have to take anyone's permission. If I want to take a break, I don't have to ask anyone's permission. And I can write an article after 15 days. I'm not under pressure like most newspaper writers to write an article every day. And what happens when you have to write every day? The quality may suffer. But if you have enough experience, you can write an article of any kind which I've already written. They will not go into that. So how do I look at interviews? Interviews are all about elimination and not selection. As I said, the person asking you questions is jealous when they look at your profile and see that you have more experience than them, that you have done more work than they have ever done, that you have grown more than they have grown more in that company. Even if they have spent 10 years in that company, they are jealous. So they try to make sure that you will never go beyond that line. And the interviewee is jealous. The interviewee, the interviewer, whoever it is, whoever is the one asking questions, they are jealous. Their thought process becomes inferior. And then I think interviews are obsolete. Landlines will survive, printers will survive more than interviews. So what is obsolete? Not landlines, not in-person discussions, but interviews, whether it's face-to-face or through video. Through video are also sometimes forced, because you don't want to travel and the other person doesn't want to host you. So when I would go for interviews, I'll just give a very short burst on that. First, I had to sit for half an hour, as they would even forget that you were there. And then they would remember, oh, you were there. Oh, we forgot. Okay, why don't you do something? Why don't you write an article based on this subject on the spot? Okay, fair enough. I do it. And then, do they even read that article? Do they even respect the effort made to write that article? No. And then, even if they want to discuss the articles, they will find 100 flaws in it. Okay, you did not write from this point of view. You forgot this point of view. You were biased towards this individual. They'll find thousands of flaws, despite the fact that they have probably never written one in their life, but because they're on that side of the table, they think they have the right to find flaws. And then when they ask you a question, they give you the impression they are being nice. They'll offer you beverages. they'll be very friendly, but in their mind, it's churning. This person can knock me from my position of strength. I may be knocked out in a month if this individual comes. I may be demoted if this individual comes. I will do everything to make sure that this individual doesn't get a foot inside. And even if the person does, I'll make sure that the remuneration they receive is not worth it and they will just say no. That's what is happening. That's what are the actual thoughts. They smile, they're all nice, they offer you beverages, but at the same time they are jealous. They look at you as competition, as someone who can knock them off their mountain of omnipotence. So who wants to go through this? They're biased. So why do you want to go through this? And if you have experience, why should you go through the interview process? If you look at sports athletes turned commentators, I don't even think they go through the interview process. So though as they were incompetent in their sporting life and they continue that incompetency in their commentary stint, yet they never go through the interview process, they never go through a selection audition process as is the term used often, and they just get selected, whether they deserve it or not, whether they are competent, whether they have the skills, whether they are good enough to be on that seat, to be able to give that respect to that position, it doesn't matter. And as far as auditions are concerned, you make one error, you slip up and you are done. They all wait for that one slip up, one error, whether it's deliberate, whether it's because you are slightly nervous. If I go today, I won't be nervous, but I don't have to go today. I don't have to prove myself to someone else to go through a process of waiting for 4 hours. I don't have to do that. I've been there, done that, and I've seen no positive and anything worth coming from that process. So for me, interviews are all about elimination and not selection. It is about the jealousy of the individuals who act all nice. It's a wasteland, it's meaningless and obsolete, more obsolete than in-person meetings, than landlines, than even taking a printout or any such thing which involves analog stuff. And then they're biased and without any logic. So this ends episode number 533 on the 13th of June 2022. This ends episode number 532 on the 10th of June 2022. Stay tuned for the next episode on the 13th of June with episode number 533.